All right, welcome everyone to Knowledge is Power, how AI is helping builders navigate their contracts and tariffs. My name is Chad Waite. I am the Senior Channel Manager for the Partnership Division here at Document Crunch, a proud FCA partner and tech vendor here. And today we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite topic, that is tariffs, right? Tariffs, the wild roller coaster we've been on since January 20th of this year, and a thing that seems to be changing relatively quickly here, day in, day out, sometimes even by the hour. We're going to take a look here in this presentation at a quick snapshot of where we're sitting with tariffs and really the path that we've been on to get to where we are at today. And then ultimately a tool that AI, or in this case specifically Document Crunch, has built to help you understand your contracts and how tariffs may impact your responsibilities as a builder with future jobs that you're bidding on and jobs that are in flight as it relates to impacts that tariffs can have on your operations and your business. Again, maybe not the most exciting stuff, but very, very pertinent to the environment today. So thank you, FCA, for bringing this to the members, and we are excited to keep this going here. So let's take a look at the last 5 months. You know, it is funny and worth noting that tariffs feel like they've been around for a long time. I don't know about everybody else here, but it feels like tariffs has been kind of the topic on the top of everybody's mind for a long time. But if you back up, it's been about 5 months that it's really been on the radar. 4 months since the first real start of implementation of tariffs and things that we have to start planning around. So it hasn't been around that long. It's just so exhausting trying to keep up to date with how you should prepare, how you should understand all the nuances of tariffs that are impacting you. So Document Crunch, we are an AI company, and of course we like to use AI in a lot of the things that we do. So I naturally went to ChatGPT and I said, hey, give me an overview of the last 5 months of tariffs. And some of the major things that had happened, but keep it to just, well, actually, at first I didn't say keep it to just 10 items. What it did was it gave me like a list of like 55 major happenings in the last month. And so that, of course, doesn't fit on a screen. So I asked it to, put it down to kind of the 10 most high impact items that have been part of the tariff journey that we've had so far. And a lot of these are familiar to you, right? February 1st, 25% tariffs, still tariffs all of a sudden set to 25, foreign auto parts and other items in that sector, 25%, universal tariffs going on. China went up to 125%, and then a month later went down to 30%, and then still aluminum tariffs doubled to 50%. Like, how are you supposed to make sense of this and where you're at? Well, to some degree, it doesn't really matter what the current status of tariffs is, because again, the whole purpose of this call is to make sure that you understand how your contracts are treating fluctuations in tariffs, regardless of where they end, right? So let's take a look at some of kind of the earlier data. So, and this wasn't that long ago. I mean, June 11th, right? U.S. tariffs on China won't change again. Says that it will total 55%. This was a couple of weeks ago, and we of course now know that tariffs from China are now locked in at 30%, and so they'll change to that. We have till the August 11th deadline for that to actually be something that is reached as a permanent trade deal with China. And then if that doesn't happen by then, who knows what they'll go up to. So one snapshot in this long journey. Here's the problem though. Tariffs can impact a lot of things in your operations, right? Obviously, when we look at tariffs, one of the biggest things that we look at is price escalation. So for the materials you're using for a job, is that going to make it so the price is going up? And the answer is undoubtedly yes, right? And that is typically the biggest thing that comes to the mind of builders across the board. However, there are other places that we've seen the ripple effects of tariffs come in that are less anticipated, but still as high impact. So shipping and receiving delays. You talk about the supply chain and the whiplash effect that tariffs have on the supply chain. We're going to talk about this in a moment, but shipping and receiving delays and your ability to forecast and plan is just thrown into the wind. And then finally, dispute resolution, right? When there are extra costs, when there are delays, when there are workforce shortages, when everything that tariffs impact comes to a head, who's left holding the bag? So again, the idea behind everything that we're about to see today is we want you to be proactive in knowing the answer to that before you go and sign new jobs with items that are related to tariffs. So let's talk about the supply chain whiplash really quickly here. The coal train analogy is always the best way that I like to look at this, right? So you have a coal train, big, long vehicle, very heavy, and it takes to go from a normal operating speed to a complete stop about 60 seconds, right? It'll take about 60 seconds, maybe a little bit more, to slow down from operation speed to a complete stop. So when you liken this to tariffs, when we say, hey, look, we're going to put a big increase on everything, and all of a sudden the supply chain has to stop, right? It's kind of pressing the emergency stop button because they have to reevaluate what the demand's going to look like if their products are now twice the cost as they were yesterday. But then if we find that we get to a point where there is a favorable and equitable tariff percentage that's being on, it's not like a light switch, right? It's not like you just flick it on and all of a sudden we're back up to speed. A coal train, to get back up to that operating speed, is going to take 5 or 10 minutes more. That's 5 to 10 times faster than it took to decelerate. And this is actually a very, very good analogy to what we refer to as elasticity in the supply chain, right? The ability to stop quickly, but to get back to a state of operation takes a lot longer than it did to adjust it for the slowdown. And so for part of this, I was just curious. This is, again, a little dated, about a month ago, but I was just curious to see what that slowdown looks like. So I went to a historical Google Earth snapshot of the port of LA from the beginning of the year in January. I think this was the first week in January. And the port of LA, of course, being one of the busiest ports in the world, you can see a lot of cargo ships in there, right? Every single docking bay, for the most part, has some sort of big container ship that's being offloaded and cargo is being processed. Here is a TikTok video, of all things, from the same angle, looking at the port of LA from May 10th, right? And look at this. Almost every single receiving bay is empty. There's one cargo ship that we can see in this. So when we talk about the slowdown and the sudden stop, it's not just speculative. I mean, you can visually see what this means from an output perspective. In fact, this is actually interesting. The LA Times in May, at the end of it, reported that the port of Los Angeles saw even more delays and reductions in stuff coming through the port than they forecast. So they knew that there was going to be a big hit on the amount of materials coming through the port, but it was actually 25% less than their reduced forecast for May than they had anticipated. So that slowdown that we just saw on this side, huge, right? Absolutely huge, unprecedented. Like the last time anybody saw something like that was in the most critical days of COVID. So here's the most interesting thing, though. Again, we talk about the whiplash effect. We talk about this do or die date by August 12th for this negotiation to happen with China. Well, guess what? The startup's happening again, right? So that coal train getting back up to operational speed is starting to happen. And now we're seeing this new wave of ocean freight from China is beginning to arrive at the port of Los Angeles. And instead of, one ship that we see docked in, we're seeing 64, 68, 64, right? So that is a far cry from what we saw back in May, and a lot more akin to what we saw in January. So why is this important to you? Why is this important? Well, guess what? All of these ships now have to go through, and their cargo have to go through customs. And there will be a backlog to getting all the people who've been furloughed at the ports, all the customs operations back up to speed to deal with this last minute, get it through the end goal here before there's another, tariff issue with the deadline that's coming in about a month and a half from the time we're recording this. Absolutely interesting, right? And it sucks for you to have to be able to kind of stay on top of this, because what this does, though, is it gives you a new optics or a new ability to say, okay, well, this is how we're going to have to forecast our delays for products coming in if there's, a bottleneck at the ports, but all these ships wanting to get in. So Key tariff considerations for builders. Where is all the impact? How should you be looking at risk that tariffs are bringing to the table when you're looking at new jobs that you want to bid on, or even just understanding how your jobs in flight are going to be handled? Three areas. The first, obviously, contractual strategies, right? How do you make your contracts more equitable to you and all parties involved, frankly, in a shared environment where tariffs can really upend everything? To do that, you do the middle item. You leverage AI, right? We're going to show you what Document Crunch does here in a minute, and AI is just amazing for this. It helps you find where those risks are in your written language as it relates to things like tariffs. And then ultimately, it leads to that last block there. We want to mitigate that risk. We want to make sure that every party has a say in the process of how we understand that risk can be mitigated in an environment that is extraordinarily fluid like tariffs. So with this, I'm going to exit this presentation, and I'm going to go over to the Document Crunch tariff preparedness checklist. Okay. So this is Document Crunch. Many of you are probably users. Many of you have probably heard of us. A lot of you have probably not even heard of us or know what we do. So Document Crunch, from a high level, is an AI platform that takes documents like your construction contracts, your insurance policies, NDAs, MSAs, whatever it is, and we run it through our AI to figure out not only what the risk is and where the pitfalls are within the actual details, but once you come to terms with those agreements and those projects, how do you execute according to those agreements that you have, legally been obliged to, and make sure that you're compliant from pre-bid all the way to handoff? Our goal as a company is to make it so that you have no disputes, right? Like, this is your digital hard hat. We want you to have projects where there are no disputes. You know from the very beginning to the very end exactly how to execute and analyze your projects correctly in a way where risk is mitigated and your teams have the ability to be guided and assisted during the execution of the project to stay compliant. Why am I giving you this background? Because it's imperative to understand that we can take the same risk analysis AI in a general sense that we deploy to analyzing any contract and redeploy it to analyze a contract through the lens of tariffs, right? So tariff preparedness checklist. Here we have a 48-page contract, and we've run it through our AI to benchmark all of the content in here against 10 areas of known risks that tariffs are bringing to the table in contracts. And these aren't anything like crazy or wild, right? It's pretty fundamental items. So, like, how does your contract treat material price escalations? There are tariffs being implemented. How do we go about navigating this as per the contract as outlined? Changes in laws and regulations, delays, we were just talking about that, and force majeure, change orders for tariff-related impacts, preservations of rights, contingency, can you use contingency for tariffs, insurance and bonds, termination and suspension right, dispute resolution, and even labor and workforce shortages. Some of these may not be the most one-to-one obvious as it relates to tariffs, but what we've seen as a company from a high level at Document Crunch is that there are areas where there are overlaps with the impact that tariffs are having and labor and workforce shortages. So our goal with this checklist is to say, okay, for all of these areas that we know can be impacted by tariffs, how is your contract saying that you need to handle it? So this is a little bit of a moot point for any contracts that you have in flight, right? You can't negotiate things that you've already agreed to. But for any jobs that you are considering taking on right now, use this tool. It is free. Use it for the projects that you need to have a better understanding of where tariffs are coming into play from a risk provision. So let's take a look at this. Material price escalation. We do two things when we look for each and every one of these areas of risk. We say the description of it, right? And for this, it's pretty obvious. The description is, look, we're trying to determine whether the contract includes a material escalation clause that allows for a contractor to recover increased material costs due to tariffs. Pretty straightforward. Do you have protection if costs increase? And what our AI will do is it will go through and create a summary after it's analyzed the entire contract against this description and answer this question right here. Does the contract explicitly allow for price adjustments due to increased material costs from tariffs? And the answer here is no. In this contract, the contract does not explicitly contain any escalation clauses or mechanisms that allow for cost adjustments due to increased material costs from tariffs. Here's the important part. If no escalation clause is included, the contract price is considered fixed, and bidders should account for potential tariff fluctuations in their pricing strategy. So here's what we're finding from a high level as document crunch and seeing the industry use this. The most important things in your contract are typically not about how something is treated. It's about the lack of language for how something can be addressed, right? And in this case, there is a complete lack of language around anything related to tariffs. And this is super common. Most of your contracts, even with tariffs being in effect for about 4 months now, most of your contracts, a lot of times, don't have anything related to tariffs in it. It's just not part of the standard language. So this gives you the idea that you need to go through, negotiate with your GCs the ability to arrive at something equitable with tariffs and make sure that you have the protections. We are not going to tell you how to do that, right? We're just telling you where the risk is so you can go through and negotiate something better. Let's take a look at one more. Let's take a look at changes in laws and regulations. This one's interesting and follows suit with the above example that we looked at. So the description here is determine whether the contract allows for adjustments in costs or schedules if new laws, tariffs, or government regulations impact the project. Of course, tariffs fit square into that, new legislation that's going to impact your work. So our AI will scan through and generate a summary based on answering this question. Does the contract provide relief, such as additional time or compensation, if new laws, regulations, or tariff increase costs or delay work? And again, much like the answer that we saw before, it says, look, no, the contract does not explicitly mention tariffs as a basis for relief. However, in this section, this page, you can go and reference it for yourself. It allows for equitable adjustments in compensation and or time if conditions differ substantially from those indicated in the construction document and cause a material increase to the builder's cost or time required for performance. This could, and this is great, right? This could potentially be interpreted to include new laws and regulations. So maybe it's not the silver bullet that gives you absolutely defined protection, but it gives you an out where it says, look, tariffs could be under this, determined or interpreted as being new laws or regulations that are impacting material increase and time required here. So again, it doesn't necessarily give you an absolute solution right then and there, but it gives you the ability to get the insights where you can go and negotiate solutions in your contracts before you actually bid and sign on these in real time. Now, this is a free product. The only string attached is that we limit it to 10 documents that you can use to scan and crunch, our vernacular for analyzing a document, 10 documents. That is because we are literally giving this to you for free, and candidly, it costs Document Crunch a lot of money to do the AI behind the scenes that analyzes all of this content. Otherwise, there's no strings attached. Use this for your projects. Use this for anything that you have in flight or you're looking at bidding on, because this is going to help you get to a better state of understanding and risk analysis for the projects that you have. How do you get this? Well, I'm going to come back here to my handy dandy presentation. I'll actually share this again. Scan this URL or this QR code here. I also know that FCA will be following up with an email that has a link to where this QR code goes as well. Seriously, we don't bite. You'll talk to one of our reps. They'll get you set up on it. It is truly completely free, no strings attached. If you have any questions, reach out to me. My name's Chad Waite, cwaite@documentcrunch.com. We're here to help. We're here to help builders get to a place where there are no surprises or punches being pulled in a very fluid and very dynamic environment like tariffs. We want to make sure that you are getting through this negotiation and this really, really crazy year of doing business in a way that is making it so you are as protected as possible. Thank you very much, everyone. We appreciate the time and look forward to answering any questions.